It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. Why you're so into Israel?
Well, this is my first trip to Israel. So, to be honest, I wouldn't even describe it as being into Israel or pro-Israel or anything like that. I'm just pro-freedom, pro-democracy, pro-good. And I'm very anti-evil. And I'm anti the killing of children in their homes while they sleep. I'm anti what occurred on October 7. I'm anti everything that they represent. You know, this isn't a fight about picking a side. There's no sides. They are evil terrorists. This is not, oh, this is complex. Oh, this is resistance. Oh, there's grey area. Oh, I'm so confused. I can kind of see both sides' perspective. No. No, 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 no. They are evil.
כשהאנטישמיות במדיה העולמית רק מתגברת, יש עיתונאית אחת שמתייצבת פעם אחר פעם לטובת ישראל.
Every single death in Gaza since October 7 and many before, but some people are too blind to see that, too indoctrinated. I'm not breaking news on the battlefield. I'm not out there kind of revealing big secrets or facts or anything like that. What I'm doing is looking primarily at a very public situation, at what politicians are saying, at what the media is reporting and how they're reporting it, and calling out the utter, complete BS. I feel passionately about making people understand is that every horrific death and suffering in Gaza is the fault of Hamas, the fault of Iran. That is it. That is it. So have your heart broken by their suffering. Mine is too. But understand who is responsible for it. And that's what I'm trying to show the world. It can end now. Release the innocent men, women and children currently in tunnels and lay down your arms. Hamas, that's it. It's up to them.
There's a price for standing up for Israel.
But the way I see it, I find it very easy to stand with this country because it is doing the entire world a favour.
Entire world?
Entire world, of course. You know, people, if you think that it will end with Israel or end with the Jews, then I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. It never ends here. And look at what we're already seeing. Look at what we're already seeing around the world aimed at other religions from extremism and from terrorism.
There's a personal price.
Absolutely.
Professional price,
I've got a 6-year-old, you know, I've got a little girl. There's a very personal price. What's happening in the world is far scarier than anything that might happen to me individually. And if I'm silent now because I'm afraid of people threatening to do awful things to me, then the world that my daughter will grow up in, I can't even imagine how bad that will be.
It's much more easier to shut up, not to go against the majority
Absolutely, I know. I look around and I see so many people who I know agree with me. Absolutely. People who have platforms and they choose not to speak. And no judgment from me, right? I'm a different person. I can't not speak. But I understand that other people weigh up the risk and determine that it's not worth it for them. I see the risk as far too great to ever be silent.
בשל עמדותיה הפרו-ישראליות, מולין כבר קיבלה איומים על חייה לפני כשבוע. היא פוטרה מסקאי ניוז אוסטרליה, שם הגישה תוכנית בפריים טיים.
I loved every second of my time with Sky. My show there became my purpose, my passion, and aside from my little girl, basically my entire existence. So that's done now. But I am not. In fact, I'm just getting started.
You've been fired.
I was gutted. It was my whole passion, my purpose, my... Yeah, I was gutted.
But you defended Israel. That's why you got fired.
No.
No?
No, not from that job. Have I missed out on opportunities? Have I had opportunities end because of my support? Absolutely. But Sky News Australia is different.
Truly horrifying moment. The Adass synagogue went up in flames.
There's been widespread condemnation to an attack in Sydney that saw anti-Israel graffiti.
Why Australia is so against Israel?
It's not. It is not at all. Our leadership has been incredibly weak in this space. Our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister, absolutely. No argument from me there. I think then the anti-Semitism that we've seen has been empowered by their response. I think a weak response enables those within our communities who are, in my opinion, not good people. It allows them the courage to speak louder. And so we're seeing that. I look back at the immediate reaction in Australia, not the reaction of everyday Australians like me, but the reaction of those who gathered in front of the Sydney Opera House 2 days after to celebrate the massacre. So prior to Israel doing anything, they chanted, they cheered, they laughed, they celebrated. And they chanted...
It's so sad, you know? It's
so sad. So, national shame. F the Jews. Where's the Jews? People heard them say, gas the Jews. The whole thing was a disgrace. Not one person, to my knowledge, has paid a heavy price for that incitement to violence. That is not free speech. I believe in free speech, vehemently, passionately. That's not free speech. That is hate speech and that is incitement to violence. But in terms of the vast majority of Australians, they know wrong from right. They know good from evil. They stand against terrorism. So I look at Australia and I think, please don't think that that is the vast majority, because it's not. But it is still disgraceful.
Is it safe for Jewish people?
I saw somewhere recently that they had advised Jewish people not to come to Australia. I look at what's happened recently. I probably wouldn't. If I had friends who were overseas who were Jewish, I would probably say don't come now.
כעת מולין הגיעה לישראל. היא ראתה מקרוב את הקיבוצים שמשתקמים מהתופת, והתנדבה מניסולי מסיבת נובה. את המראות האלה היא לא תשכח, וגם אותם, היא מבטיחה, היא תפיץ לעולם.
I don't think I've ever experienced such horror as I experienced at the Nova site and at the 2 kibbutz that we went to. But I've also never experienced such hope, and that sounds really strange, but I'm standing in a space where 3 little children were killed mercilessly after watching their parents killed. Yet I look out the window and I see volunteers, architects, builders, plumbers. You should, as a nation and as a religion, capitulate. But you continue to live and to fight and to just be the most extraordinarily strong people I've ever encountered in my life. And it's such a privilege to meet people and to understand what makes you so special. I'm a single mum with a 6-year-old. I'm not from Israel. I'm not Jewish. I'm not American. I have no skin in this game. But you see, I do. And that's the problem. We all do. It doesn't matter how far away from the coalface we are. When hate is allowed to fester, we all lose. I look back at every single thing I've said from October 7 until now. Every editorial, every monologue, every interview, every column that I've written. There is not one thing that any sane, normal, rational human being should find a problem with. Not one. So I don't want to live in a world that thinks that's controversial. Welcome to ILTV Israel Daily. I'm Erin Molan. Great to see you. I didn't need to come to Israel in person to believe, to see evidence firsthand of the unthinkable atrocities committed on October 7, to hear firsthand what survivors were forced to endure, to feel firsthand the ground shake as bombs explode nearby, to convince myself that I'm on the right side of history. I already know that. But I'm so glad that I came, because even in my pre-existing state of unwavering conviction, I underestimated the level of depravity, the extent of the evil that occurred, the calibre of enemy that surrounds this tiny democratic nation fighting desperately for its life. I'd read and I'd seen and I'd heard, but I could not comprehend fully until now. I stood inside the room where 3 beautiful little children, 2 my daughter's age, watched their parents being murdered before suffocating and burning to death themselves. I walked where thousands of innocent young people ran for their lives at a music festival devoted to peace. I watched the raw vision from October 7, all of it. And it was from their body cams, it was from phones, it was from security cameras. A dad desperately trying to save his 2 young boys, one under his arm, the other running ahead, sprinting away from terrorists before being killed in front of their eyes. Then I witnessed their shock, their fear, their trauma, shaking, just shaking, crying, shaking, whilst the killers went through their fridge casually like nothing had happened. I watched the sadistic beheading of a young Israeli man, hacking again and again and again. I stepped onto the porch where 2 babies were kidnapped and still to this day remain in Gaza. Their toys are still lying untouched for hundreds of days. But do you know what cripples me more than anything that I've just said? And that's hard. What scares me more than anything, it's not actually what they did. It was their reaction to it in real time. That's what I can't comprehend. I'm trying to process it. I cannot, no matter how hard I try. The glee, the joy, the pure elation at what they were doing. They watched children burn and they smiled and they laughed. They laughed and they cheered when an innocent teenage girl was shot in the back. They shot her. Their actions on that day were evil personified, but their reactions to them were even worse. The enemy of Israel, the Jewish people, and let's be frank, all of us who believe in life and freedom and peace, they can't be human, these people. It's not possible. You cannot coexist ever with the people I watched carry out October 7. None of us can.
So much for joining us in our studio.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. First trip to Israel. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it, and we'll talk about it. But first of all, let me take a moment to thank you on behalf of myself and behalf of many, many, many Israelis that saw your voice, as I've mentioned, as a refreshing and unique voice in the global media. So first of all, thank you, Erin.
That means so much, but it also makes me really sad that so many people feel the need to thank me, because all I'm doing is looking at facts and then telling the truth. So how sad that is rare. It makes me feel really sad.
It's very rare, and as I've mentioned, we'll talk about it, but you've mentioned it's your first time in Israel, and it's hard to believe because of the voice you took in the last year.
I had to ask someone what the kefir was called only maybe 2 months ago. I mean, I have no association or affiliation. I have no bias. I have no agenda.
I'm not Jewish.
I'm not Jewish. I'm not from Israel. Anything that you could possibly think of to come at me with won't work. I am an Australian who's never been here before. In fact, now I have a lot of Jewish friends. But before October 7, I had one school mum friend, and I really didn't know anyone else in the Jewish community that well. So what I do is speak the truth, and I stand up for what is right. And it blows my mind that the rest of the world don't see it as clearly as I do, and it scares me as well.
Yeah, it's really scaring us all. And you've become such a prominent, one of the most prominent ambassadors for Israel in Australia, but also a distinct pro-Israel voice in the global media, all global media. What is the moment you realized this is a significant issue for you, and what was your stance on Israel before October 7th?
It's a great question. So I think the other quite unique aspect of me is I was a sports host for most of my career, for 20 years nearly. I was the first woman to host rugby league, the footy show. And so I lived in an entirely different world. So you asked me what my stance on Israel was prior. I didn't really have one because I never had to talk about it publicly or officially. And in Australia, we feel very far away. So we keep across, and I'm very passionate about national security and foreign affairs and defence. So I keep across it, but I wouldn't say particularly that I had a stance at all. But when October 7 occurred, I lost my beautiful dad maybe 10 months prior in January of that year. And when I woke up in the middle of the night with my little girl next to me and I saw the headlines, the news starting to come of what was happening,
the videos.
It was the first time since he died that I went to call him. And so that to me was, and I don't really believe in spirituality or signs or anything like that, but Dad was this incredible ally of Israel, and he came to Israel many times. He was a major general in the army and a senator. And I didn't even realise it was after my monologues, my editorials started going viral all over the world, that Mum sent me this screenshot. Dad had come to Israel in 2014 to investigate the war. And the headline of his investigation as a major general with a bunch of foreign retired generals was, "They put us to shame in how they conduct warfare." And my dad ran the war in Iraq for a year. He's run wars in East Timor. He's the most experienced, he was the most experienced general in Australia that's currently serving. And for him to, with his moral compass, which I know better than anyone, is second to none. It cannot be moved. Even when he was fighting ISIS, Al-Qaeda, we would say to him as kids, how can you follow the rules? Why do you have to follow the rules when they don't? They're evil. They're terrorists. And Dad would say, if we don't follow the rules and stand up for what we believe in, what's the point? What are we fighting for? We're fighting to protect what we believe in. And if we stoop to their level, if we do what they do, if we throw away what matters to us, then there's no point. We might as well not even fight to save anything because we don't have anything. So with that in my mind, when I saw those words from Dad, and when I looked at the situation, there's just no doubt in my mind. There are enough experts in the world who also have no agenda, who say that when it comes to minimising civilian casualties, when it comes to warnings, when it comes to what you are doing, you do it almost better than anyone else in the world. So I feel so sorry for a country that has had some of the most appalling things in the world done to it. October 7 was, I know there's a huge history, but to me that's just the depravity, the evil, the horror of it. And I look at a reaction of a world who should be saying, what can we do to help you? And even then it's not going to be enough because you'll never heal from that, but what can we do? And instead the world went, maybe you're to blame. How can we make this your fault? How can we condemn you? And that's crazy.
So you see it in a clear way, and your voice is so clear and strong. So what distincts you from other journalists in Australia, in the global media? Why do you see the facts and you know what is true and others don't?
I'd like to think, and I know actually for a fact, a lot of people in the media will send me messages who are on different networks and who host different shows and say, that was amazing what you said. I wish I could do that too. I think a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are scared about their reaction. They're scared that they might get threats as well. They're scared that they might lose contracts or lose jobs, ambassadorships. They're worried about polarising themselves. But my response to that would be, and each to their own, because no judgment here, but I'm much more worried about a world that allows terrorism to flourish than I am about anything personal. Because you can have everything in the world, but if terrorism is allowed to continue at the trajectory it's continuing with the support of seemingly the masses in the world, particularly young people, we are completely screwed. Nothing else matters. So
some of your peers, your colleagues in the media industry, privately texted you and supported you, but couldn't make it out loud?
And look, at my old network, Sky News Australia, there's some incredibly powerful voices on there who are wonderful in this space. So I'll say that. Absolutely, colleagues of mine, former colleagues at different networks in Australia, text me a lot and say, that was amazing, great point, powerful. They're not saying anything like it, though. So I would be disappointed by that, yes, but I would also be comforted by the fact that there is a very large silent majority who stands with you, despite the fact they don't quite have the means yet to share that publicly.
So let's talk, Erin, about the elephant in the room, in the studio. Maybe it's not an elephant, but I know it's a very complex and delicate question for you, the issue of the dismissal.
Yes.
Was the dismissal, in your opinion, as far as you know, connected to your determined stance for Israel?
Not at Sky News Australia. As far as I know, no. It just wouldn't make sense to me because there are other voices who are super strong. But I'd say this in terms of other positions, it definitely impacted those, and I know that. But do you know what? I don't want to work with people, or if I'm missing out on opportunities because I stand against terrorism, then I don't want anything to do with those companies or those people. So I know that I do absolutely speak out very strongly for Israel. Yes, I lost my job at Sky News Australia, but in my I can't connect the two as being directly responsible.
Because here in Israel, it was the narrative. Lots of Israeli people who support you, who love you.
Which is
why you connect and tie between the dismissal and your
incredible,
support.
and the support has been incredible. And what I would say is, I want to focus on the future. I want to focus on moving forward. And if people want to be angry that I'm no longer there with the platform, completely fine. But be excited that I'm about to get a much bigger one.
Okay.
That's what I
so
would
much
say.
Bigger platform. We'll keep it for the
Yes.
end of our conversation. Have you anticipated the backlash after October 7th, after your first editorial, your first segment?
Never in my life. And something I haven't really spoken about yet to anyone. So I was an advocate for online safety well before October 7. So because I was the first woman to start hosting football and sport, you can imagine some of the awful things that I would get online, like, people threatened to rape my unborn child, to kill me, to, utterly ridiculous. So I started to lobby the government and say, we need free speech absolutely every day of the week. I believe so much in free speech. But what I don't believe in is things that are illegal in the real world that are okay online. I shouldn't have to look behind my back because someone's threatened to rape my unborn child when I'm 8 months pregnant. So I started this campaign to push for the Online Safety Act, which essentially just meant that we mirror the laws that exist in real life online. And that was passed like 3 years ago in Parliament, and the Prime Minister at the time called it Erin's Law. So I was immensely proud of that. I was trying to make the world safer for kids. So I understand what it's like to be attacked on social media and to be threatened on social media. What happened after I spoke out for the first time in this space, if I'd imagined the worst case scenario, and I understood that there would be people who didn't agree with me. I understood that there would be sections of the community who would voice and express that. Fine, whatever. I'm a big girl.
It was on another level.
I could never have imagined. It was so bad that I needed a police escort to go to work. I needed to give my daughter, my 6-year-old, to her father for a period of time because there were so many, and not just random, but really specific death threats.
Can you share us those threats?
There were ones about my daughter's preschool. There were ones about, I know you go to this area, I know you live here, really specific. And then I went to the police, and the police looked into so many of them, and there were so many connections to, and I've got to be careful with what I say here, but let's just say that these weren't considered to just be idiots in their mum's basement sending messages. There were some pretty serious players in this space. So I could never have envisaged that, and it was really hard. And I was, I think, a little bit traumatised by it. And I remember I took the next week off, and I never take a day off. I was meant to do a show the next day, actually, a different show. And I rang my boss and I said, I'm drowning here, I can't do it. I was scared. I was scared for my child. And I had a big week of, do I just ignore this issue? It's my show, it's called Erin. I can talk about everything else in the world. We're in Australia. I can ignore it. It doesn't mean I need to change my stance, but I can just ignore it.
But you couldn't.
Talk about US politics, talk about Australian politics, blah, blah. I couldn't. I got back up that very next week and I looked down that camera and I went harder.
And Erin, what did your family know in real time? I mean, if anyone from your circles, your closest circles, approached you and told you, Erin, maybe you can skip expressing your pro-Israeli stance just at least for this week?
I definitely had people who suggested to me that it might be better for me and a more simpler, peaceful existence to not even tone it down, but to just avoid it altogether. But that's not me. I'm not capable of that. And I have this kind of perspective and mentality with anything. And it's just, same as relationships might break down and then you go through something awful, but pick your hard. That's what I always say to myself, pick your hard. So I look at this and I say, okay, you choose the hard of speaking out now with the chance that it might make a difference. It might help in some tiny way to shift the narrative, which in turn will help canvass support, which in turn will help heap pressure on Hamas, which in turn will help free the hostages, end the threat, etc., etc. Or I can be silent now, and my hard will be 5-10 years down the track when terrorism, the claws of it, which we've already seen, have come to my country, have come to Europe, have come
It's
to
not
America.
an Israeli problem.
No, it's not.
It's a problem of Australia and
Absolutely.
Europe and the US and all the democratic countries.
And it's a problem of Islamic countries. It's a problem for everyone. Everyone in the world is impacted negatively by this. And right now we can say, oh, it's far away. It's not. It's already here.
Yeah, like Douglas Murray has argued for years, we're in a war on the West. I assume you can agree with him.
Very much so.
We talked about
Country and a people you don't need PR. You were massacred by evil terrorists. You don't need PR. You need the evil players to stop being able to do what they do, which is attempt to mind-wash the masses.
So I must ask, has anyone from a Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel approached you?
Well, I had a meeting. I've had a few meetings. I met with the Speaker of the House, Ohana, this morning. We went to the Department of Foreign Affairs, your version of that. And the Minister was meant to come, but he got called away, so I didn't actually get to meet him. But I met the head of the department, yes, and they were saying to me, They asked the same question, absolutely. And I think the most powerful of tens of thousands of people have reached out, and it's been incredible, the good ones. But the thing that just hasn't left me, the one that has impacted me the most, is just a regular bloke who wrote to me, and he's Australian, he's not Jewish, he's the same as me, no skin in the game, even though we all have skin in the game. And he said, my morals haven't changed and my values haven't changed, but after watching your clips, the side that I now know they align with has. And how powerful is that? It's just a shift where people go, I care about kids in Gaza. I care about kids in Gaza. You care about kids in Gaza. The way to save them is to stop the terrorists. That's how you save them. Not condemning Israel or flying the flags of Hamas in the streets or at your university or at our Christmas celebration. The way to save the kids that we all apparently care about is to eradicate the terrorists who are killing them.
And not condemning Israel.
Correct.
Yes, Erin, you've been here for 4 days, but as I understand, on Friday night you were in Jerusalem and not in Tel Aviv, so you didn't get the full experience.
No, I didn't. I woke up to of course, my mother had sent me 50 messages. I woke up and saw, and I don't understand how you live. I don't understand. I look at my little girl, and if she's got a cough, then I feel sick that she might be uncomfortable, and I feel worried. And how do you as people, as parents, as families, do you just have this sick feeling all the time? My heart breaks for you, not even for what Hamas does to you and what they did and what they're still doing, but just imagine the rest of the world. Imagine living in a place where at any second your child could be wiped off the... Imagine. That's what people don't understand.
And do people in Australia doesn't understand?
I don't think so.
What is the coverage of the hostages in Australia?
See, the issue in Australia, and this is... So, for example, our public broadcaster, the ABC, I was in the car the other day driving, and the start of the bulletin was something to the effect of, we are on day 400 and something of Israel's illegal invasion of Gaza. And this is when you think, there's no malice, but you think about, with them I assume there is, but with people listening, everyday Australians, mothers, they're tired, they're working 5 jobs, cost of living crisis, 6 kids, husbands are being mean, and they hear that, they get out of the car, that's their narrative. They're not like me. I read, all I do is watch Fox News, I listen to the ABC so I'm balanced, I read articles, I research, this is my life. For most people, they don't have the luxury of being able to look deeper. So that's what I try and do in my clips. What I'm trying to do is really simply and hopefully effectively and hopefully powerfully point out the complete hypocrisy that exists in that statement. It wasn't an illegal invasion. They came in and murdered like over 1,000 people and stole people, 100 of whom are still there. Israel's trying to get its people back and trying to stop the terrorists from doing the same thing over and over and over. But if you're just listening to that and you're not as engaged as me,
it's so
then
difficult to hear it as an Israeli.
Yeah.
I also prefer Fox News, but when I hear like even Piers Morgan, that he is a balanced anchor newsman, it's still very difficult to hear this narrative.
Even just people quoting the death toll as though it is fact, rather than saying
fake days,
these are Hamas numbers. Just this is important because we are a news organization. I'm an opinion host. I'm a commentator. I give my opinion. But when I watch news shows who spout as fact,
you want the facts,
things that are not true, or what they should say is 40,000 from this is what Hamas, a terrorist organization, and hey. We're not saying they're not right, but they're not renowned for being particularly accurate people, you know? So I just feel like the media has gone absolutely crazy, the mainstream media.
Yes.